I would kind of like to see something that Google would have to kind of rival that. I mean, I know they're kind of doing other things, kind of like what Amazon does, where you wish they would do more things, but they really intensely just are a retail store that just do multiple things.
Mm-hmm. But I'm okay with, a company like Google staying that way because they're not in the entertainment business. They're in the technology business. And I'm cool if they just continue to
But
better
I thought
technology.
we all thought Apple would do the same thing too. Look what Apple's done though. I mean, Apple's turning themselves into an entertainment with their podcasts and the end of iTunes, but Apple Music and all that shit. They've taken a whole separate route with that whole section of everything, whether it be podcasting or music, and it's like I get it, but at the same time too, people aren't buying your product as much anymore, and your products aren't shit, and they haven't advanced, and they haven't done this, they haven't done that. Like, people aren't buying iPhone as much as they used to. Are you really sure you want to dump all of your money into something that people aren't buying? I mean, people will buy iPhones for forever. That's just how it is. But when you go from 4 out of 5 people owning an iPhone to like 2 out of 5 people owning an iPhone, times are changing.
It's a big deal.
Only company that's ever going to survive is Disney. Disney and Coca-Cola.
Disney's here to stay.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get a chance to watch all of the movies? All 6 of them?
No, but I come on now. I've seen enough of them enough times that have been burned into memory. I mean, you and I can... My favorite's probably Friday Night Lights. I mean, besides Remember the Titans, I think Friday Night Lights was such a gritty film, and I think it showed a real side. I forget. I gotta look up the country actor's name. Oh, Tim McGraw, right? He was the one.
Yeah.
He
was also in The Blind Side.
Was he really? I still have not seen The Blind Side.
He played the dad.
Yeah, we're still gonna talk about it.
It was surprisingly good.
I just don't really. I don't know. There's just something about the movie. I just go, I don't really need to see it. I don't know why. I've been really busy. It's been work, kid, him till 9, and if you turn anything off but Spider-Man and fucking Wreck-It Ralph, kid loses his goddamn mind. He takes up both TVs.
I think Varsity Blues is the grittiest from a player standpoint. The town, yes, but the town is very prevalent in Friday Night Lights, but I think we get the player side in Varsity Blues.
Yeah, I think you just get scenes, but I mean, at the end of Friday Night Lights, when he doesn't get to the end zone and he stopped short and the game's over, just the shot of him just head on the ground, like, as you see the players run by.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a gritty player moment, though.
Yeah, I actually, before the first time I watched it, it was spoiled by my stepmom. And even though I knew what was coming, I was really pushing for him. And so the end felt even more harsh. Because I was like, I knew this was coming. But yet I opted not to believe it. But it was. Watching it another time, it was really good. Garrett Hedlund does a great job. Billy Bob Thornton, of course.
Here's the thing. I like both those movies, and I like Gridiron Gang, but I think Gridiron Gang kind of loses its grittiness. Like, I still think it's good, but also when you look at The Rock and Exhibit in there, you kind of get separated a little bit from the character, because I don't think... It's still early on in his career, and I still don't think he did a great job in that movie. I think you could definitely see the motivating factor, but in terms of his performance, it wasn't tremendous, and it also is Exhibit. Exhibit is an actor, and... doesn't always play the right way, and like I think he did a great job in the role, and I think the movie's entertaining, but it's good from a football standpoint. I think there's not enough good films, especially with like inner city youth and like something that was more geared towards younger kids, because a lot of this is, when you look at Remember the Titans, they all look like adults. Like, this actually felt like you were watching kids grow up, make mistakes, and move forward and grow. Like, it was a better human interest piece, but I think it was more predicated on the kids than it was The Rock.
And it was, definitely. Just the shot of the one kid coming into block for him as he runs that, I think his like first big touchdown, was really cool. And like moments like that are what stand out in movies like that. It was funny though, because we chose movies that came out around 2006 and around 2000. And so watching them, it was interesting because in my head, was like, that's a penalty. But in 1999, 2000, 2006, those rules didn't apply
Oh
yet.
no, you talking like
And so
you
I
talking
kind of
like
had to
Any
take
Given
myself
Sunday,
out.
like that first scene where both
Yeah.
quarterbacks get like absolutely destroyed back to back plays, and they had to bring the trainer back out, and he goes, "Hey, you need to come look at him. What did he do? Get hurt falling off the bench?" Like it's just
Yeah.
something like that, which I think is you're right. Nowadays we all talk about CTE and concussions and everything like that, and we wanted to throw concussion in there, but it's I mean, 'cause it would have been a good topic, but at the same time, too, I think you get the gist of injuries throughout any of these sports movies or football movies because that's what it is.
Hmm.
You get the reality of being a player, playing through the pain, but also mentally what that tolls on you.
Well, and physically, it mentally tolls on you. Because what I noticed throughout most of these movies is the players, the characters, they will hurt themselves for the team. Or for something like Any Given Sunday, you've got the guy who just needs to make so many more yards and so many more tackles that he's willing to literally die, as they told him earlier. So you get that player loyalty, but also when is that loyalty too far? I guess from an injury standpoint.
You know when you're talking about that, like Any Given Sunday is a very good take on kind of the differences in the movies that we've picked, because when you're looking at like Any Given Sunday, you're looking at grown men professional football versus a Friday Night Lights where it's a lot of young kids, a lot of mental mistakes. You're seeing almost the mental progression across these movies, especially if you look at them in a certain way, where you're getting, you tried your hardest and yet you failed, like in Friday Night Lights. But in Any Given Sunday, it's like by any means necessary. I have to do this. There is no failure.
Mm-hmm.
I will die before I let this happen. And I think that's a completely different mindset and mentality. Especially you see the brutal hits that they took. I think Peter Berg, when he directed that movie, was a lot more. He wanted to take that intensity with him.
When with Friday Night Lights, Booby Miles is a good representation of what across that timeline of high school, college, professional. You have that moment of I'm hurt and can no longer play. What do I do now? And there's a very special moment where Miles breaks down in the
Mm-hmm.
car, and he's like, I know how to play football. That's the only thing that I know how to do. And you kind of have to wonder in big or small towns that the high school football is really important. They're willing to pass some of the players just so that they can play. You get some of that kind of school politics within there, and they kind of pump some of these players out that can't hold their own in an intellectual standpoint because all they've done is football, or they're hurt to the point where all they can do is football.
Yeah, because it just breaks down your mind and your mentality. You can't think anymore. You've taken enough hits where when that's all gone, if you didn't do the smart thing, you didn't go to school, which a lot of these kids you see get passed through fairly easily, especially if you're a star player. Oh, it's okay. But I mean, once you don't have that, your meal ticket's gone. But it's a real thing. It happens to so many kids. Even if going off from the movie standpoint, if you look at like Last Chance U and a lot of those kids, like that's all they do is play football. They're not smart. I mean, this translates especially very just as well emotionally when you're watching this, like any of these movies, especially when it takes with a star player or someone who doesn't get a fair shake. Because I think you see that in a different side with like Remember the Titans. Though it's a lot more racially charged, you still get the my back is against the wall. What am I going to do? It's either you have to be perfect or you risk losing everything. And I think that's what makes these football movies so great. There's always that bit of not competitiveness, but it's always some form of back against the wall. And they do a good job of sucking us in with this, whether it's a real story or a fictional story. It's done right, especially football, because we're all suckers for it. We all love football, and I think we like to see the dramatization on it.
One thing that I thought about throughout watching the movies was from a production standpoint how the camera shots were made, because they look just like regular games, minus the random cutouts to players or whatnot. But did they shoot this with multiple cameras, or did they have to get very specific? In Any Given Sunday, the editing played a really big part throughout, because it would randomly show images or quick clips, whereas, something like Remember the Titans was all right here, right now. And so telling these stories on the field makes for very interesting thought of how it came to be.
Absolutely. But let's be real here. I think out of any of these movies, I think our consensus number one is Remember the Titans.
Yep. They are remembered.
It,
I mean, not only that, I mean, Disney obviously produced it, which, kind of goes back to their glory days of just Disney stuff and not other studioed stuff. But it's just such a good story, because you get to see that turn from we are a segregated team to we are one team. We are the Titans. And when they come out for the first time dancing and singing, it's just, I don't know, I got chills. And it was awesome.
that movie's so great because when you think about it, if you're a sports fan and you go back and you think about this, there's so many good moments in that movie. And especially going to that training camp, I think how it was done and how they shot these characters in that time frame. Because there's one where I talk about with Bertier's, and starts talking about Bertier's mama, and they start doing the Yo Mama joke thing. I think that scene was so, is as small as it was. He got upset, but they didn't have him react right away. They had the scene play out where he eventually realized quickly that it was a joke. And just small things like that when you're like, man, that's really how it was. But to see the growth on them, especially the jog through where they get to, the Battle of Gettysburg, and they're all standing there. To me, it was one of those moments where he talks about, if we don't stand together, then we fall. We stand to fall together. And I think that was such an important moment. And what I loved is when they get back and they get through onto the field and you actually see them play the season, it feels that much better. But when the accident happens at the end, you just feel that gut-wrenching. And you feel for him even when he's sitting in the hospital bed, Bertier, and you want him to be better. And even at the funeral, when everybody comes together, you get just that strong building and camaraderie that you can't help but to be emotional with it.
Both scenes, one where Julius shows up to the hospital and is comforting Bertier's mom, and then they're at the end of the movie, end of the game, where the girlfriend is being rushed off the field because she just came on, and she just holds out her hand to finally give that handshake that Julius asked for at the beginning of the movie. So it was really cool, and you get those little moments like that whether they were factual things that happened or not, help push that story to mean that much more.
And I think that's one of the things that makes this movie so memorable. If you think about football movies, or even just sports movies in general, Remember the Titans is one of those that come up there. But with not only Remember the Titans, I mean, you have so many other great movies that go deeper into bits and parts of history, like We Are Marshall, which I thought, it still is one of the greatest tragedies in sports, to completely lose a football team, or nearly everybody on a football team. It's hard to build something off of that. And the way that they decided to build this movie around, and it wasn't always necessarily about winning, but it was more about what rebuilding the community, just played a lot better. And I think
how the community suffered in this, because you get used to these players, and obviously you have your families with these players, and then to lose them all, both individually and as a team, because of how much you lean on that team, all of your supports essentially crumble. And throughout that movie, it was nice to see the little bits of how those individuals that were hurt kind of brought themselves up, or came to the realization of, look, we need football to get past this, even if it's not the football we know. And I thought that was really cool.
That's what I like with these football movies. Is though we picked a lot of dramas. We were talking about it before the show. We talked about the 2000, 2006 kind of era that we chose to go off of for a lot of our sports movies, but also was the era where we got a lot of different feelings off of those. And I think we got a lot of great stories at that time as well too. And so we've talked about Remember the Titans and how that made us feel, or how how it was shot and why it's one of the best. But when you talk about like We Are Marshall, it becomes so uplifting at the end, though it comes through tragedy. And I think it gives you a different feeling, obviously, than Remember the Titans, because we were talking about two completely different subjects. But when in terms of a football movie, I think it predicates and it plays those emotions off the same, where you're going in looking, okay, I know what happened, but it always gives you something new, especially with these based off of true events.
You still have that indifference of players. Kind of need to merge these two groups of people to become one team. And I think that's kind of that's the underlying theme of a lot of movies, like The Replacements is all about making a team fast. Gridiron Gang is about making a team of kids who've never been given a second chance. It's cool because in the end that's what it's about. And something like Friday Night Lights or The Replacements and Any Given Sunday, where they talk about needing heart or having heart and getting back to the game that is pure, instead of something like Any Given Sunday where the players are like, I need to get to this to get to this. Just playing the game to play the game is what it's all about, what it's supposed to be about.
These movies are not always the happy endings that we hope for. And I think that's another great thing as well, too. And that's a great thing with sports movies in general. Like with the end of Friday Night Lights. They don't win the game. He gets stopped just short. And I think that gut-wrenching moment, especially with a lot of these football movies, especially with like We Are Marshall, I mean, football towns in middle America and especially in Texas, I mean, that is their whole life. That is their lifeblood, is football. It is high school football. It is Friday nights underneath the lights. That is what some towns shut down for. And when you get the chance to feel that raw emotion, that's what I liked about Friday Night Lights. It is probably another one of my favorite movies because of how gritty it is. And it gives you a real perspective of what the extremes are that these people go through and what the standards are in Texas for football.
Now, if you had to choose your favorite final rally speech from all of the movies, the final, like, just before the end of the movie, end of the last part of the game, what would you choose as your favorite?
Oh, man.
I've been thinking about this one and asking you all week.
Okay, so you're going to go first, because I don't want to pick the same one as you.
Well, from a player standpoint, I like Varsity Blues. Mostly because John Voight's character has left the building, and Mox comes up, and he's like, he told us that the next 48 minutes were for the next 48 years of our life. He's like, let's just play the next 24 to play the 24. After that, it's done. And it's really cool because it's after this big moment of loss, and they go back and finally win it. But I think Any Given Sunday is the most realistic. He talks about getting old and what that means in that line of work. What it means when you do get old and have to come to terms with that. And I think it poses the most realistic issue of players want to play forever, but at what point do you stop because your body can't take it? Or your body has taken enough of it?
See, it's still a tough one, though, because you can still throw in Billy Bob Thornton's speech in Friday Night Lights. All of them have a different thing. I think Al Pacino's in Any Given Sunday is probably the best, just because it is the realest. And I think out of any of those movies, you're getting a real look of what it is. It's not about getting there, like what we get with Remember the Titans and Gridiron Gang. It's about the journey to get to that point to be victorious, and that's why those movies are great. But when things aren't going well, or you're losing, or you lose, how do you pick yourself back up? And I think you get that with Billy Bob Thornton's speech, which I think is very much needed, because those kids are so emotionally hooked in. The thought of losing and defeat, especially with them, it's not in their mind, and when it happens, it's just as devastating. And I think to be able to try and pick those kids up, and also, I mean, basically his halftime speech as well too, where you have to rally. But Al Pacino's, I mean, I guess being getting older, it is one of those things where you understand that you don't quite live in that world, and as you get older and you age out, someone is there to take your place, and you only have this bit of today to play, and that's it.
And you have to savor it. You have to make the best of it so you can remember the best of it.
Like, I wanted to pick Denzel so bad, but it's not fair, because that movie is so good.
The one from Gridiron Gang is cool, because it's from one of the players, and he's basically talking about where they've come from and how they got there and how being a team is the best, and he doesn't want to be back on the street. And it's also realistic because of what it's set in, where that story is set. And We Are Marshall is all about being rebuilt, getting to this point, and even if there isn't a win out there, it's still, the thing has been done. You've been able to do that thing, even if you lose. On any given Sunday, you could win or you could lose. It's about how you handle it.
You're gonna get me amped up to run through a wall. You're gonna say that with a little bit more emotion. Like I'm getting fired up. You gonna try and give me that speech?
Speaking of running through walls, though, in that sense, I totally forgot that Jon Favreau was in The Replacements. He plays the fucking crazy guy. And I completely forgot about it. Obviously, it's a huge cast of people, but I saw his name. I was like, oh my god, that's right.
And then you think of him nowadays, and you go, "Wow, he was in The Replacements." But you kind of forget how long his career expanded. But that's another conversation for another day. Maybe we need to do a deep dive on him. Just saying, because he's got a lot of gems out there.
Director episode.
But what I loved about this is football is back. I mean, coming back actually as of Saturday. I mean, college football if you're interested, but. This was the great thing about sports movies, and especially football movies in general, because you can go from any range of emotion, and whether it be fictional or non-fiction, the stories still feel real. And I feel the sport perspective, to like any sports movie, the spectacle, the arena is always going to look great, and it's always going to feel pumped up, it's going to be charged. But it's also the stories and how it's told gets us there, and also makes us feel as good or as bad as we want to feel in those moments. Like, to me, the most gut-wrenching is the end of Friday Night Lights, where they lose the game and you just see the team in slow motion run across the field, and you can just feel the dejection in them, and it feels so, you feel so bad. But then you get to a We Are Marshall moment where you just feel so uplifted as well, and especially how they did that. It's great that we still have these movies, because I don't think sports movies get enough credit, and I definitely don't believe football movies get enough credit. I know we don't get enough of them. But at the same time, I wish that we would, because I think there's plenty more stories to be told, and I think people want to see them.
I'd be down to watch them, too. I mean, especially watching... I mean, I watched 8 movies in 4 days, I think, which may have been a little bit overboard, but after watching Varsity Blues, it got me in the mood. Ooh. And since I couldn't watch football, that was the closest thing. As someone who didn't... I finally got back onto being able to watch football last season, and loved it. Forgot how much I actually really liked watching it. And so now I have the capability of putting them on at work or coming home and watching them, getting in chips and pizza and shit. So I'm really jazzed for the season.
All right, well, last thing, let's hear your unfortunate team, and let's hear where you think they're going to go this year.
My team's the Cowboys. At this point, it depends on if we keep the players that we need, then I think we're number 1 seed. But if that falls apart, then I don't know where we're going.
I will stay on my little perch because, I like you too much, and we've been friends too long.
I know, you're a Saints fan.
Actually, I have more gripe with the NFL than I do your team, so I got plenty other things to worry about. I think the Saints win the Super Bowl. I really do. I think they're a contender this year. They're really good. I just think it's now or never for Drew Brees. If he doesn't do it now, he's not going to do it. I mean, he's getting up there. I think he's 39 or 40 now. I mean, he's just slightly younger than Tom Brady, but the team's good. Good defense. That's what I'm hoping for. I don't know if we play you guys this year. I don't believe so.
In any event, on any given Sunday, you could win or you could lose. It's just a matter of how you handle it. With that being said, I am B. Frank.
And I'm Travis.
And we are worth the admission.